Hi everybody. So I wanted to give you guys a short video basically just showing you how to calculate your grade in a class, particularly a class like mine where the assignments are weighted by a certain percentage of the total grade. So, and doing this using a spreadsheet, it's pretty simple and straightforward, and also it can actually be really quite helpful for figuring out things like, how high do I need to score on the final exam in order to get X grade in the class. So let me show you how to do this. So the first thing you're going to need in order to do this is a spreadsheet. I'm going to use Excel. You could do a similar thing using Google Sheets or something else. So here's the spreadsheet, and I've already populated it with some information that you need. The second thing that you're going to need is the information on the class syllabus that tells you what the weights are for the various assignments or items that you have. All right, so if you look on the syllabus, you'll see something like this. So in this particular case, you have a class in which you have these assignments worth this percentage of the total grade. So for example, you have reading quizzes is 7.5%, homework 7.5%, 2 analysis papers, each one worth 10%, 3 basic exams, each one worth 15%, and a final exam worth 20%. And of course, all of these things add up to 100%, right? So this information here is what we call the weights. It's how much that particular assignment counts towards your final grade. So what you do with this information is you create a spreadsheet like the one that I've set up here. And so what you'll notice is I have in this leftmost column, these are the assignments that you have in the class. Here, I have a column here that's your grade on the assignment as a percentage of the total points possible for that assignment. All right, and so this is where you'll put your grade in. So for example, if you've got an 85 on exam, this is where you'd put the 85, okay? Now, the next column, I have the assignment weight or the value, i.e. the percent of the class grade that the assignment is worth, and that is the weights. These numbers are the numbers that you have over here from your syllabus that tell you how much that assignment is worth towards the final grade. Then I have a column here which is called the assignment weighted value, which is something we'll calculate, and I'll explain that in a minute. And what I've done here, and it's not strictly necessary, but I'll explain the reason why I've done it, is I create a second column that has the same information that I had in this column, which is the weight that the assignment is worth, right? The assignment weighted value, i.e. the percent of the class grade that the assignment is worth. So in other words, I'm having this in here twice, and I'll explain to you why I do that in a little bit. So all you need to do then, once you have your spreadsheet set up like this, is you want to input the assignments that you have. So for example, oops, let me take off cap lock, my apologies. You have, this is reading quizzes, okay, and then you have homework, and then you have your analysis paper 1, and then analysis paper 2, and then we have exam 1, exam 2, exam 3, and then final exam, right? And so all of this information here is basically just the information we have here. And then we're going to put the information in here, which is the weight of each of these assignments. So the reading quizzes are worth 7.5%. The homework is worth 7.5%, right? These are these numbers here. Paper 1 is worth 10%. Paper 2 is worth 10%. Exam 1, exam 2, and exam 3 are all worth 15%. And then your final exam is worth 20%. And I am also going to take this information that we've put here, and I am going to copy it here and paste it in here, okay? So this basically sets you up for figuring out how to do this. Now, what you want here is your total. Okay, so this is going to end up being 100, but that is the total value here. So if I go here on Excel, I can just do a sum, and that gives you your total. And as you can see, it all adds up to 100%. All right. And then basically, as you go along in the class, you could set something like this up in advance. And as you go along in the class, you can start putting in your scores on these various assignments. So let's say in the reading quizzes, you've got reading quizzes at 92%. All right. Now, in many classes, like, in this class, you'll have a number of different quizzes. And of course, you would have to figure out what your average is on all of those quizzes. I'm not going to go into that because in our class, we have our learning management system that calculates that out for you. So you could just pull that information there. But let's say what you have is a 92 on that. And then on your homework, let's say you have a 90% on your homework. And then you get on your analysis paper, your first analysis paper, let's say you get a 17 out of a total of 20. All right. Now you need to convert that to a percentage. Okay. So 17 divided by 20 turns out to be an 85%. All right. And, so here you would put in an 85. So you would need to do that calculation. You could use the spreadsheet to do it, or you could do it in a regular calculator. But whatever it is, it's like 17 out of 20. That's an 85%. All right. Same thing. Let's say on analysis paper 2, you did slightly better. You got a B plus, and it was an 80. It was, you got an 88% on that. Then on your exams, let's say you struggled on the first exam, you got a 75. You did a little bit better on your second exam, you got an 83. And then on your third exam, you did really well and you got a 96. Okay? So now we're kind of getting to the heart of matter, and we haven't had final exam. Let's say it's 2 weeks before the final exam, and so this is the situation we're in at the time. So here's what you need to do. You need to do a weighted average, and how you do that is you're going to multiply your score on each particular assignment by the weight, the amount that it's worth. So in other words, you're going to have in Excel, you do this is equal to this value multiplied by the weight, and it gives you what I'm calling the assignment weighted value. And you'll do the same thing for all of the assignments. Okay, so I just drag that down. It basically, does the same thing. So here you have, right, P3 times C3, so it's this times this equals this. This times this equals this, right? This times this equals this. So that's what you have here. And I'm going to put this in here as a total, right? And then again here, you're going to do a sum. You're going to get the sum of all these values, all right? So now what you do to figure out what your grade in the class is you want to divide this total value here divided by the weights. Now the thing about this at this point is we still have not taken the final exam. So I'm going to delete this number here. So right now this is going to add up to 80. But and this is the reason why I created this column over here, is because this is so that you'll always have that information so you won't forget what it was. All right. So what you do here is this column I'm going to call basically your percent grade in class. Okay, in other words, that's what you get here. And what you do here is very simple. You're just going to have this cell is going to be equal to this total value of the weighted values divided by the total percentage points that you've done so far. Okay, so what that's doing right now is that's telling you that your current average in the class prior to taking the final exam is an 86.31. All right, that's your current standing. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because what's nice about having the spreadsheet set up this way is if now you can figure out how much do you need in order to get, say, if you're shooting for, you want to keep that B. So it's like, okay, well, if I do really badly on the exam, am I going to get a C? Right? What's going to happen to me? So here you're going to put this as the 20% that we know that the final exam is worth, right? And so here then you can start playing with numbers, okay? So in other words, if you get a 0 on the final exam, if you get a flat out 0 or you didn't even take the exam, right? That's what this thing is showing you now. Your percentage is going to be 69.05, which is a D. Now, maybe a nice professor is going to round you up to a C, but no guarantee, right? That's a D. So now you know you need to get more than that. Well, how much do I need to get in order to be guaranteed I get at least a C on the final exam? Well, let's see. You can start playing with numbers. Oh, okay. Well, if I get at least 5 points, right, on that final exam, pretty likely, right, I'm going to at least get a C in the class. Okay. Or you're like, okay, how do I make sure I keep, I manage to get a B? So you can start putting numbers in. Well, what'll happen if I get a 50? Oh, if I get a 50 on the final exam, my grade in the class has gone to 79%. So a 50 is still technically a C, right? But let's say I do 53. It's still a C, but it's 79.65. Maybe the professor will round up, right? If I do 55, boom, okay. I'm clearly in a B at that point in time. So it's like, well, as long as I get at least like 55, right, I'm guaranteed that I'm going to get at least a B in the class. All right, so that's how you figure that out. And then if you're shooting for the A, you look at, well, let's see, can I even get an A in this class? Well, if I got 100% on the exam, it's 89.05. Okay, so technically, you might not be able to even get an A in the class. But it'll depend, if you got a perfect score in the final exam, maybe the professor will look at it and go, that's pretty close. I'm going to give it to him or her. All right. So this is, how you can use a spreadsheet like this to set up, something to figure out how you're doing on an exam. To figure out how you're doing in the class. Now, the other nice thing about setting the spreadsheet up like this is, let's say you've got a professor who says, hey, I drop the lowest exam score. All right, I dropped the lowest exam score. So you can actually play with that and go, okay, so then what would happen in this case if I delete, this is my lowest exam score, that's a 75, and I delete this, which is what it's worth. Oh, okay, well then it's like if I get 100, I can get a 91.5 in the class. All right. So that's the advantage of doing this. And again, the reason I have this column here is just so that you can remember what these percentages are and put them back in, right? So you don't forget them, okay? That's the basic idea, and it's a pretty simple way, but this is kind of useful for figuring out your grade in the class. This way you don't have to constantly go and ask your professor, how am I doing in the class? What's my grade? As long as the professor has given you the information on, how you did on your different assignments, right? And you've kept track of that, which you should be, you can just plug it into a spreadsheet like this and figure out your grade. And then the other nice thing about this spreadsheet is you can actually use it to figure out what your grade is along the entire semester. So as you get new information in, you can keep updating it. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So in other words, at the beginning of the semester, right, you'll just start fresh with this and you don't have any assignments here at all. Okay. But you know what the weights are, and I've listed them here. So as you get a score, so for example, you start doing your reading quizzes, and if that number, let's say, in the beginning, your quiz score is okay. Let's just leave it at the 92 that it was. That was worth 7.5%, right? And so what that's going to tell you here is, okay, so for the reading quizzes, you got the 92. Its weight is 7.5, and so that gives you this value. And all the way down here, you still get the same amount, right? This is a 92, so that's the percentage you're at now. Now, let's say on your homework, you're doing your homework, and it ends up being 95, and again, I'm sorry, 90, and that's 7.5, all right? So I'm going to assume that the homework and the reading quiz score is consistent throughout the semester. Of course, as you submit a new quiz or a new assignment, that grade might change. Each time you get a different assignment because the grade might change. But I'm just going to keep it the same now just for demonstration purposes. All right, so let's say then, the first thing that you guys have in the class is maybe an exam, all right? And so we said that on that exam, I believe the first exam I said there was a score of a 75. Right? And so you have that, and that exam is worth 15%. If you recall, I have this number here as the 15%. And so now, after that first exam, your grade point, your percentage in the class is an 83. So it keeps updating it based on the information that you have, right? So in other words, before you had that exam, going into that first exam, you were at a 91%, which is based on the average between your reading quiz and your homework. Okay, but on that first exam, you got a 75, and it was worth 15% of your grade. boom, it took your grade down from that 91 down to an 83. All right, and then, you know, after that, okay, that's the first exam, and then you have a paper that's due, and I believe we said that on that first paper you got, you know, the 17 out of 20, you got the 85%, and the paper we know is worth 10%, right? So you're gonna put the 10 in here, and that brings this thing, this 83 goes up to 83.5. So now you're, you know, your score in the class after that first paper, right, is now an 83.5. So this way you can use this spreadsheet like this, and every time you get your grade back in for a new test or a new paper or a new whatever, you can enter that information into the spreadsheet and use it to tell you what your current grade is in the class. Okay, so for example, so then you've done the paper, and then you have your next exam comes up, and on that exam we said it was an 83. Right, and again, the exams are worth 15%, right, because that's that information here. Boom, it updates it, and now you're at an 83.36, okay? And so that's how you do it, and you would just keep updating it every time you get a new assignment in. You would just update the spreadsheet with the new information. So let's say after that second exam, then you get that the next paper. We had said you got an 88 on that paper. Again, the papers are worth 10%. That's the information here. And so it updates. Now you're at an 84.08%. Okay, and so that's how you would do it. So you can use a spreadsheet like this to continue to update your scores throughout the entire semester, right? So then you have, you know, your third exam. You got, I believe you said you did really well, so you got a 96, and then now you're at this 86. And so that was the situation we're at. And so we were looking at it like what happens if you got the 100, and that was 20%. Boom. Okay, so this spreadsheet can be used the entire semester for you to just continue to update as you get new information, and it'll give you a sense for what percentage you are at any given moment in time. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's useful, and that's again one of the reasons why I leave this information here so that you can always refer to it to add it in here as time goes on. All right, so I hope that was useful, and that's it. Take care. Thank you.